Hi, Brian Hitney, Solution Architect at Microsoft, here with a quick overview of Data Activator in Microsoft Fabric. This is part of our Modern Analytics Academy, where we look at new features and examples related to our analytics stack. Data Activator is an observability tool for automatically monitoring and taking actions when certain conditions or patterns are detected in our underlying data stream. While there are a lot of different use cases, this is often used for monitoring IoT devices and sensors, sales data, performance counters, and system health. Currently, Data Activator is in public preview, and it can monitor Power BI visuals, which is what we're going to look at today, and also Fabric event streams like connecting directly to an Azure Event Hub. In the future, Data Activator will support additional data sources like KQL query sets and more advanced triggering. See the roadmap in the notes for more details on that. This demo that I'm showing you today, you can implement yourself in one of our labs using this URL, which I'll also include in the notes. And we have this scenario in both a challenge-based hackathon, and it's also published as a module in our lab. And by the way, if you're wondering what the differences are between a hack and a lab, a hack is an open challenge-based event where typically small groups work with a coach to build a solution that meet a set of success criteria, leveraging whatever tools and resources that they choose. The lab, on the other hand, is step-by-step guidance using specific tools and services. So a hack might have users set up a real-time streaming solution, allowing each group to implement however they see fit. One group might choose to use Azure Event Hubs and KQL. Another might decide to use Kafka and Databricks. And the choice is theirs based off of what they know and oftentimes what they don't know, because groups will oftentimes choose to implement a solution using a technology that they aren't familiar with. On the other hand, the lab is a walkthrough of a specific implementation. So in this case, the lab uses Azure Event Hubs, KQL, and Power BI in Microsoft Fabric. So in either the hack or the lab, the core scenario is still going to be the same. We have a fictitious financial group that would like to set up a reporting infrastructure for streaming dashboards and to help monitor some of the stocks that, in this case, are also fictitious, and do this in real time. This lab for Data Activator walks through this implementation, and that's what I'm showing here. Here I've got some dashboards created as part of the lab, and I'll switch over to a line chart that shows the recent price over the last few minutes, and also a second chart that shows percent change of each stock symbol. Now, before I dive into Activator, I do want to note that Activator is currently in public preview, and features and options are likely to change. When using Power BI as a data source, Data Activator works best when looking at time series data, particularly if your data set has a high frequency, which is the case here because we're taking readings every 1 second. This is because Data Activator will poll for data at an interval of every 5 minutes at the fastest. So if we want to see that historical information that occurred between polling intervals, we'll need to make sure it's included in the chart. So to get started, we'll click on the ellipsis in a visual that contains the data we'd like to monitor, and we'll select Trigger Action. This will open up the Data Activator panel, and what we could do is we could select what we'd like to monitor, in this case, price, and we'll break it out for each symbol, which is the stock symbol. You can see that it recognizes our time axis, which is the timestamp on the x-axis, and we're going to set this to every 5 minutes. And we're going to monitor this when the value becomes greater than 1,000. And we'll be able to edit this later on if we'd like to. And I'm going to save this in a new Reflex. Just give it a name, and we'll talk about Reflex in a moment, and click Continue. This is going to set up a new Reflex, which will take a couple of moments, so we'll hit pause and come back in just a moment. Okay, so my Reflex has been set up, and I've switched over to it. Now in Data Activator, these reflexes are containers that contain 4 main concepts: the objects, the events, the triggers, and the properties. Now the object itself in this case is just simply symbol, which is our stock symbol. It could be really anything that we are looking to be monitoring. And it has only one property, and that's the price. And that's the event stream that's coming in because we're monitoring the price, and we can see that reflected here in our chart. As mentioned, Data Activator is going to be polling every 5 minutes. So you can see that we were able to grab the first 5 minutes of that data because that was what was in the chart. And any moment we should see the next chunk of data come in after Data Activator completes its poll. Now we're currently looking at the trigger, which is when our price becomes greater than 1,000. We could set up additional triggers in a moment. We'll do that, where we could set it up for when the price hits a low point. Now, if we'd like to, we can also look at the raw data coming in by clicking over to the data tab at the bottom. And you can see when we do that, it brings up all of the events coming from Power BI and how many events it received over time. So basically the raw data feed that we're taking a look at. We'll go back to the Design tab. Now, one thing to note is here under Properties, by default, we're not seeing anything. And if we look at the triggers, where we have all of this data, you'll notice that when we come down and look at the action we would like to take when a trigger activation occurs, you can see that by default, you can see that we have a few trigger notifications that would have happened already at different times. The default here that is set up is just to send an email to the administrator. It includes the subject, condition, and so forth. And if we want to include additional information, that would be any of the properties that we've configured, which we haven't done yet. So I can say up here, new property as an example, and we'll add the price as a property. So we'll just give that a name price, and we're going to select the price from the current data set. Okay, you can see that we have now our additional events that have come in, again, hitting that 5-minute poll frequency. Now, the reason why we do that is so now we have property as a reusable piece of data that we can use in any of our triggers. So it could be that we'd like to have price, but maybe we're monitoring some other condition that we might have in our data set. Like if we had temperature and humidity as an example, we could trigger off of temperature, but then also include the humidity in the notification. So now we have the price as a property. We're also monitoring price as our event. And if I wanted to send an email that included the price, I can now select any of those properties to include like that. And what's going to happen now in those notifications, whether that be an email, a Teams message, or Power Automate workflow, all of this information will get included in that. So we can see that we have our trigger set up, becomes greater than 1,000, and each time we have a bunch of options here that we can change, and there's going to be a lot of growth in the detection options that we have as the product gets closer to release. But we can change this so that it stays in a certain range, or it has to be in a certain range for a certain amount of time. That way we can help limit the number of notifications so we don't end up with a flooded Teams channel or inbox with thousands of notifications. So next what we'll do is we'll look at setting up a new trigger. So we'll just say new trigger, save these changes that we've made. And for the title here, we'll just say that the price bottoms out. And we're going to do the same thing where we are going to look at an existing, we selected a property there, price. We can also change that to be a column of price from the data set. It's really the same thing, right? Two sides of the same coin. And because we're looking at, in this case, the price coming in from the events or the property, the price, but it's the same value. And then we're going to choose the type of detection, which in this case is going to become less than or equal to, let's say we want to get notified every time. So we'll say each time that the price is less than or equal to 5. We can see we had 2 times, or 1 time here that occurred, or over here as well, that we saw that time at 3:01. So this is a good way also to get a sense for how accurate is our trigger. If we're saying, if we were to bump this up to like 555, that could very well give us way too many triggers, right? That we'll see because a lot of our symbols are hitting that value. And then we can select an action. In this case, we'll say email. Same thing, include the price in the email notification. When we get an email notification, it will look a little bit like this. Notice the price that's included as the property that we specified under additional information. Of course, we have the option to set up other triggers for values that might be in the data stream, like %change, or add additional objects to the Reflex for other data points we'd like to monitor. As a final step, be sure to hit Start at the top in order to start getting your notifications. A couple of things to note. If you see gaps in your data, like this, make sure that the visual has a time axis with enough data to cover the poll frequency. Otherwise, Data Activator will miss the data between the polls. Once we have it configured correctly, it should look more like this, where we have all of the data because the time axis within the visual contains all of the information that occurred between the polls. Now, if you're not concerned with time series, but monitoring other visual elements, say like gauges, you'll want to make sure Power BI dataset or the semantic model updates at least as frequently as Data Activator polls. And you can do that by going into the setting. Here I've got my data set. I'll click on settings. And under scheduled refresh and performance optimization, I can modify the refresh frequency to match my poll frequency from Data Activator. They should be the same, or in this case, it could even be faster if I'd like to have that model updated more quickly. And finally, if you don't see Data Activator at all, and you have administrative privileges, you can go into the settings by clicking on the settings icon, going into the admin portal, and making sure Data Activator preview is enabled. So I hope this was helpful. For more of our content, you can visit the Modern Analytics Academy at aka.ms/MAA. Thanks for watching.